do you have anything you want to say, Buffy, or should I just take it away?
Well, first, let me welcome everyone to the FPA Coaches Corner Spotlight today. We are very fortunate to have Barbara Kay with us to help us talk a little bit about how do we move forward? What's coming next for us? And for those of you who haven't become familiar with Barbara through her many wonderful contributions to FPA, she's a business psychology and productivity coach. She serves clients through coaching and consulting and speaking. And she talks on subjects such as growth, productivity, teams, client relationships, communication, change, and leadership. And there's probably more. She has been serving clients since 1998, and she has dual degrees and credentials in clinical psychology and coaching. She's professionally licensed and maintains that licensing and certification. She's also the author of many great articles and 2 books, and is the career coach for FPA. Welcome, Barbara. Take it away.
Thanks, Buffy. So thanks everybody for joining. We've had COVID-19 and now we have a lot of civil unrest in our country. So thank you for taking your time to join this webinar in the midst of all this craziness. So Buffy asked me to do this webinar some months ago, and I was looking into June and thinking, we might still be in a space where we're not quite sure what the future is going to look like. And I didn't know how true that was going to be. And it's certainly very true today. So I proposed, why don't we do something about what now? So the first book I wrote was all about thriving in change. And so the way I framed up this conversation was all about resiliency and how to manage life when we really have, it's all upended and we can't really predict the future. And so I have lots of content, but before I just start launching into content, I really wanted to also open this up to people asking questions, bringing up topics, having a dialogue, which apparently, Buffy, is true. People can mute and unmute themselves. Is that correct? That's correct. We can't hear you right now, Buffy, but you're nodding your head yes. And so you can use the chat space, you can speak. I can walk through some of this material to get us started, or I can just open it up. So I'll tell you what. Why don't you use the chat space and tell me if you want me to start on the material, or if people have questions they just want to start with right away, we can have more of a dialogue from the get-go. So type away in the chat space and let me know what you want, material or dialogue, because we'll still have dialogue even if I start with the material, but I can start material first, or those have questions, we can just start with questions and dialogue. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to post your request and your interest.
Barbara, this is Louis Johnson in Dallas, Texas.
Yes.
I just want to thank you and Buffy for putting this on this afternoon and helping me get online through the telephone. I appreciate it. One question that I had, and you don't necessarily have to answer it now or whenever it fits into what you're planning on doing. My question is, if you could form one habit, either like daily or weekly, just one, what would be the best one to help you to be more productive?
Wow, that's a really, really great question. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
It's Louis Johnson. I'm in Dallas, Texas.
Louis. Okay, Louis, thank you very much. I think if I had one habit, and we could talk about this in the material as well, one habit would be to focus on a mantra you develop for yourself that helps you with what I call the Swiss Army knife of resilience. So that tells me that we're going to go through some of the techniques that I'm bringing up, because that will answer that question for you. Somebody said they're feeling overwhelmed. Somebody else said, let's do the material first. Future career networking, connecting with prospects and centers of influence, said Kristen. Okay. So why don't I start by going through some of the material, and then we'll have more of a dialogue as we go through, and you're allowed to take me off topic if you have something that's completely not related to this resiliency. If I can answer it immediately without derailing the interests of other people, I will. If not, I will send you to resources, or I have promised the FPA that as a career coach, I will give every single FPA member free coaching. So you are welcome to take me up on that and ask for a time for you and I to talk privately. And that often is helpful, because one of the challenges of doing this work in a generalized format, and you know this in your financial wealth management and your financial planning, everybody's life is different. And so you can talk about general principles, but specific application to specific people can be very different. So let me go through the idea of what I was going to talk about for today, and we'll have dialogue along the way. So the what now, in the change research that I did when I wrote the Top Performers Guide to Change, and then continuing to update that, there's actually good psychological research on resiliency. And the good news for us is that resiliency can be somewhat innate, in the sense that you can have people who are born somewhat more optimistic, or are born somewhat more flexible, but the research shows undoubtedly across the board for many decades that resiliency skills actually can be learned. And resiliency is almost like the immune response. We're now hearing all about the immune response, strengthen your immune response. Resiliency is like a muscle. So the more you practice resilience techniques, the more you build your resiliency. And so that's really all good news for us here. So we're gonna, the material covers, let's understand something about human psychology. These are my words. Number 2 is human myopicitis. That's my term, I made it up. It's not a real word. Myopicitis is my word. The Swiss Army knife of resilience, and what I mean by that, and then just a couple of extra tips that work for you and work for your clients. So let's start with that. Here's the human psychology. This is a model that I developed. You're not going to see it anywhere else. I've never seen it anywhere else. It's my personal intellectual capital. This is Maslow's hierarchy of need. Anybody who took Psychology 101 remembers Maslow's hierarchy of need upside down. So what happens is Maslow's hierarchy of need is we need safety first, and then we need shelter, and we need food, and then we need productivity, and then we need relationships and love, and then we need productivity, and then we need creativity, and at the top we need self-actualization. So I flip that upside down, because what happens human psychologically is that when we are shoved to the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of need, and we are feeling very under threat, and by the way, in this environment right now, especially those of you who are living in towns or cities that are having riots or violent protests going along with the peaceful protests, we've had a huge amount of threat. COVID-19 and then civil unrest right now. And so when people get into a mode of threat, they become the opposite of Maslow's hierarchy of need, and they get very, very narrow in their viewpoint. And so that's why I flipped it upside down, because when we have the threat response, we go way down to our most primal reactions. And until we can get out of that threat response, we don't do very well. So the left-hand side is the threat response, which drives us down to a place of fear. And the thrive response is what helps us come out of that sense of fear. And as we rise, so the bottom is fight or flight. You are just protecting yourself. You are as isolated and as insular as you could possibly be in a protective mode. And then you get, maybe you get a little bit better, but you're still very defensive. And then you go up a little bit more and you're able to be productive, not really expansive, but you're just kind of doing your work. And probably a lot of us, after that first initial COVID-19, like the world is changing, maybe we felt a little bit closer to the bottom, but then we hit a stride and we're like, okay, I can just do my work. I can just do my work. I can just do my work. And then it's not until we feel actually comfortable that we begin to open up and say, I can think about growing. And then it's not until we feel really confident and really optimistic and really positive that we actually are opened up and say, now I can think about being inspirational. Because in the human psychology, until we're really comfortable and confident, we can't get to that level of inspiration, which is why I took the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and flipped it upside down. Because it's only when we get really optimistic and positive that we can look out in the wider world. So, so that's the psychology of change. And what happens with human myopicitis, my term, is we get 4 very poisonous, and you can look at this up in the literature if this appeals to you. This is all based on psychological research. 4 poisonous perspectives that tend to pull us into a threat response. And that is the feeling that the thing that's happening to us is pervasive, it's everywhere. Like there's no limits to it. That it's personal, that it's all about me or all my fault, that it's permanent, it will last forever, it will never change, it will never get better, and that we personally are powerless to do anything about it. And that tends, when we have any one of those perspectives, that tends us to lead us into 2 modes, and I use the Peanuts characters. We either turn into like the blamer, angry person, or the victim. And when I was putting this together, by the way, these 4 poisonous perspectives are universal. This is what all the literature and psychology talks about. Doesn't necessarily happen all the time or all of them at all the time. Any one of them is a very poisonous perspective that tends to pull us down into that defensive and threat response. The interesting thing about COVID-19 is it hits all of these markers. You know, at the beginning, this thing was like, this virus could be everywhere. It's invisible. We can't really tell where it is. It is extremely personal. People that we know and love and ourselves are at physical risk. It was hard to tell, and the people are talking about, we don't know when this is ever going to end. And then people feel somewhat powerless about how am I going to fight this invisible thing. So I looked at this and I thought, wow, this particular time in life is hitting every one of those poisonous perspectives. And when we get sucked into those, we go down into that place of defense and threat. So if you've been feeling any of that in the last 2.5 months, welcome to humanity. That's what happens when we feel that level of threat. And we tend to have that going on in our minds. And by the way, the 24/7 media is not helping because they want to make us even more afraid than we would naturally be. On top of that, we have all our human biases. We are irrationally driven to pain avoidance. This left-hand bucket, by the way, there's like somebody who's done a bias chart. I didn't put it in here because we didn't need that level of detail, but there's like 300 different biases. I'm telling you, I think when people need to get a PhD in psychology, they just make up a new bias because there are many more biases and they come out all the time. And I think they need to make up a new one so they can do their PhD research and have something to their name, because the chart of biases is really ridiculously detailed and not very helpful. So if you think about it, we have buckets of bias. So we have biases that all cluster around pain avoidance. We have biases that cluster around appeal. We have biases that cluster around what we believe is true. And this really operates really well with all your clients. And you know, I love the graph at the bottom. You know, we get greedy and we buy when it's high. We sell when when it's low, and then we repeat until we're broke. But in this particular environment, the left-hand side has been particularly true. We are irrationally driven by pain avoidance. If something is vividly traumatic, okay, people dying of a disease is vividly traumatic. Repeated often, okay, the media has been drumming this in our head for 2.5+ months. It's personally relevant. Okay, you can't get any more personally relevant than our friends or family or ourselves having a great physical risk. And it's strongly emotional. And so we tend to irrationally have pain avoidance when any one of those things are triggered, and all of them have been triggered. I won't go through the other ones. You can just read this. Oh, and by the way, I know I'm talking fast. I grew up in the East Coast because I can talk fast. So these slides I've literally put in a PDF, and they will be available to you in the slide, but also in the PDF, because as we move on, there are specific techniques that I added, and so the PDF can literally be your worksheets. So what happens when we have those 4 poisonous perspectives, when we have our biases, where we're irrationally afraid of things beyond the actual risk because of our biases, we just drop right down to that fight or flight or guard and defend mode. we're afraid, we're defensive, we're fearful. You've seen this all over the country, and people are just retreating inward. And if you felt that and your clients have felt that, welcome to the human race. We all have felt that to a certain level. The power of resiliency is the skills of resiliency create that bridge. The intent of resiliency and the effect of resiliency is it creates a floor. And so instead of whopping ourselves all the way down to defensive and reaction, flight or flight, we can get a floor and we can come out of it without having gone into the pit. So here are some resilience techniques. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because I'm giving you the PowerPoint and I'm also giving you the PDF so that you can work this through on your own. And I want to get to dialogue. The number, and this is what I call the Swiss Army knife of resilience. And this is why I'm using the word Swiss Army knife. So normally in life, when we're going along, we have a lot of tools and resources at our disposal. But when we're in an environment where we can't predict the future, and we don't know what we're going to need, the analogy I use is it's like going on a hike. So any of you who likes to cook or has a nice home, you probably have a lot of kitchen equipment. You might have a Cuisinart and a fancy blender, and you've got tools and techniques and pans and pots and lots of little fancy kitchen equipment. When you go hiking or you go on a camping trip, you don't pack up your whole kitchen and take it with you because you just can't be very mobile. And you can't move quickly with all that kitchen equipment. What we end up taking when we have to be mobile and flexible is we take a Swiss Army knife. A Swiss Army knife is not as good as a Cuisinart, but it has a lot of flexibility. It has a lot of usefulness. It has a lot of utility, and it's very portable, and it's very helpful in an environment where you're on a journey where you won't know what you're going to encounter. So a lot of the resiliency tools are really what I call a Swiss Army knife. You're not trying to predict the entire future. You're not trying to imagine exactly what's going to happen because we absolutely cannot predict that. And when we try to predict that, we get in this place of being frozen because we have no idea what's going to happen. And if we try to get too detailed or too predicting of what exactly I need to do to predict the exact, we can't do it. It's just impossible. So my analogy is jettison all those great kitchen tools that are great if you have all the freedom and flexibility to be stable and use your whole kitchen. In an environment where you don't know what the future is, you're out camping, you need a Swiss Army knife. So Swiss Army knife tool number one, this is what we're loading the tools in our Swiss Army knife. Swiss Army knife tool number one is to raise reason and gain perspective, because when we are afraid, your brain literally works like a seesaw, and the emotional centers of the brain, the amygdala, where all our feelings, anger, fear, all that lives, is in the lower order of the brain, and our higher order of the brain has our rationality, and it literally acts like a seesaw. So when the emotional part of the brain is up, the cognitive part of the brain is down. And you cannot get reason to raise up like a seesaw when you were a kid. You cannot get reason to raise up until the emotional centers of the brain are calmed down, particularly fear and anger and all of the anxiety that we've been feeling. So in order to get reason, we have to calm the emotional centers down. And by the way, this works for your clients as well. You got to calm the emotional centers down. You cannot talk somebody or logic somebody into rationality. You have to deal with the emotion and calm the emotions down. And one way to do that is to help people vent away feelings, not circle around them and make them worse, but allow them to get their feelings up and out. And that's true for you, that's true for your clients. Get the feelings up and out to vent them away, and then get that 10,000 foot view, because when we get into those poisonous perceptions, they're not actually true, but they just feel true. So we have to get a much bigger view and look at the big picture so we don't get stuck in myopicitis. So to gain perspective, you want to vent away the feelings, you want to try to get a 10,000 foot view, and you want to focus on, this is number 3, is really important, what's 100% true. Because the poisonous perceptions are liars, they make you think it's true, but we're not literally powerless. whatever we're experiencing is not literally going to last forever. Whatever we're experiencing is not literally those poisonous perspectives. It just feels that way. So in order to get out of that myopicitis, we have to focus on what's 100% true. So that's first, vent away the feelings, gain some perspective, because that will help us actually follow through with the next tool, which is, this is a really powerful tool developed by the resilience experts. Rather than focusing on all the bad things, which we're fearful of, or all the things that we do not know are going to happen in the future, what's going to happen, what if, which is just crazy making. If we cycle into what if, we can never move ahead, is focus on a list of 3 things. The first list is I am, and this is your core of your being, qualities, characteristics, strengths. It's the things that are the core of the being. The I can, these are a list of skills and talents and expertise that you have acquired, your education, your skill sets, all your experience you've had. So the I am list, the I can list. And the third list is the I have. And that's money, that's practical resources, that's also people that are helpful, staff, support, family, colleagues. And when you make an I am, and I can, and I have list, and you literally write them out. And by the way, psychological brain research shows we remember and feel as more real things that we handwrite as opposed to typing. So if you are willing, literally handwrite these lists out. You will feel much more empowered to move forward when you review all of these strengths and resources that you have, because in a place of threat, all we think about is what we don't have and how out of control we are and how fearful we feel. And that's what cycles in our brain. And so we have to figure out and remember, what is all the resources that I have? The reason I did number 1 as number 1 is because when we're in a place of anxiety, we have a hard time doing this. So we need to vent the feelings away. And somebody asked, how can I help someone vent the feelings away? I'll get to that in a little bit. So the second piece of our Swiss Army knife of resilience is reminding yourself of the I am, I can, I have. And so Lewis said, what could I do? And I said, okay, here you go. Vent away the feelings. Tip number 1 is get your list of I am, I can, I have, and post it prominently. Number 3, in the Swiss Army knife, I couldn't figure out what was going to be the knife and what was going to be the screwdriver and what was going to be the can opener. So you guys get to decide which one of these things are all the little bits in the Swiss Army knife. But number 3 is gain a sense of control, because human beings absolutely despise the sense of being out of control. And when we're in an environment like we've been and your poisonous perceptions are going, you feel completely out of control. And people don't realize we actually have more control than we imagine that we do. So here's this is why I put it in a PDF, because this is a worksheet you can do. So list in 3 columns. Column number 1 is things you have absolutely no control of. Like you have no control over what Europe is doing about coronavirus. Nope, not in our, we can look at what happened to Italy and Spain, but we have no control over that. So that, we have no control about a lot of things. So you list things you have no control of. Column number 2 is you list things that you can influence. You have some influence. Then you focus on column number 3. What is it that I have 100% control over? Because when we're in a place of threat, we tend to focus on where we have no control and we feel out of control. We tend to forget all the areas that we have 100% control over. And sometimes we spend our time fretting and stewing about things we have no control over, or even on things that we have some influence but can't really control, and then we don't focus our energy on the things where we have 100% control. So that's tip number 2. First, get your strengths listed, those 3 kinds. Tip number 2 is get a list of things that you have 100% control over, and that's what you can operate on and act on. So that's number 3 in our Swiss Army knife. Number 4, I'm answering Lewis's questions in 4 tips, not 1 tip. Sorry about that, Lewis. Is to make what I call a Swiss Army knife of a plan. So brainstorm actions for you and your clients in your practice that are universally successful, that are going to work regardless of what might happen in the future. And I am 100% confident that you'll be able to come up with ways that you handle your clients, ways that you deal with your day, ways that you deal with your practice that are universal disciplines that are going to always be successful. And that is your action plan. Then after you brainstorm those, I like to use Post-it notes because I'm kind of a physical person and it helps me to put the Post-it notes out, but you can do any way you brainstorm you want. Take that list and prioritize those actions based on their level of versatility. You know what? You can't do 55 things at once, or maybe you can. I can't do 55 things at once successfully. So if you can look at what would be universally successful and then think about, okay, what's the level of versatility in this that might be helpful in any situation, you can prioritize it. You'll probably come up with maybe 5 or 10 activities, focus areas, disciplines that are going to be universally successful and highly versatile. That's the point of the Swiss Army knife. It may not be a Cuisinart that has all the fancy attachments, but a Cuisinart is pretty heavy to lug around when you don't know where you're going and you have to carry it with you. So this idea of the Swiss Army knife is to have highly versatile tools that are useful in any environment. And then make yourself a short list. And so Louis, here's your actual answer to your question. That short list is the one thing you can do every single day. Once you get that short list of universally successful things that are highly versatile, I always recommend that people make what I call a mantra around it, that you identify yourself. This is why I'm doing these things. This is what these things are going to be doing for me. This is why I'm focusing on them, because there have been and there are going to continue to be so many distractions. And if you can get a short list that has a purpose and meaning mantra to go with it, and that's like on your mirror, on your computer, on your desk every day. Because in a place of fear, we tend to be highly distracted, our minds tend to spin, and we tend to get off track. We need that discipline of staying on track, staying on track, staying on track. And then absolutely get support and accountability, because this is very hard to do alone. And one of the things they've developed and learned in what they call thriver literature, which is sociologists and psychologists that study people that had horrible, painful, terrible circumstances and yet thrived. So I don't have time to go through that today, but what they learned, one thing they learned about those folks is every single one of them got people around them to help them. Nobody was the Lone Ranger. Nobody succeeded by trying to do it alone. So getting support and accountability is super, super powerful. Then I want to move on to a different topic about styles and tips for your clients, but I want to take a pause, take a breath, and see if people have questions. So Carrie asked how to help someone vent away their feelings. Okay, so I wrote an article about how to do that, and it was on the Journal of Financial Planning, and I will send Buffy a link to a download of all the articles that I've packaged up together that I've written for the Journal of Financial Planning. So that can be also part of this PDF and tools that you get, but I'm going to also answer the question right now. So when people are feeling upset, we need to do two things. Number one is actively listen, which means like we do all of that nodding our heads and acknowledging their feelings and doing that reflective listening. If you've had any kind of listening training, people have told you to reflectively listen. And basically what reflectively listening is you nod your head, you acknowledge, and you repeat back, not robotically, but you reflect back. That's why they call it reflective listening. It's like you're holding a mirror back up to the person. I hear you saying, it sounds like you feel very frustrated. It sounds like you feel very discouraged. I hear you being concerned about that. I hear you being concerned about that. And it's amazing. It's amazing the power of somebody listening, caring, acknowledging and hearing you, and you know they've heard you because they're telling you, I understand, it sounds like you feel like this. I hear you saying that. I hear a lot of frustration. I hear a lot of concern in your voice. And what that does is it legitimizes the feelings and it takes them out of this swirl of inside their mind and their brain. And it's like venting off steam. It allows them to release it. It's the idea of somebody witnessing and understanding that other person's feelings is so, 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 so powerful. In graduate school, I had an entire class on listening, and I had to be recorded and filmed and examined on how well I listened to people. And I tell you, if you can help them vent away their feelings and just let them feel like you understand them, and do not move to solutions right away. People get frustrated if people go, okay, let's now fix it. They need to be able to let it go and then talk about what might help you feel better right now. How can you be able to move forward with this? How can you feel better so that you can think differently? You know, ask some gentle questions and just let them vent it away. And that has a lot to do to just sort of allow them to release it. It sounds so simple, but it's really, really powerful. Okay, let's see, what else do we have? Oh, okay. Jeff says, how do you prioritize by versatility? So you would prioritize by, if you have disciplines that are going to help you in any situation, some of those disciplines are most likely going to help you more in some situations than another, or some of those actions might help you more than in some situations than another. So for instance, I was having a conversation, we were talking, this was with a financial planner advisor, and we were talking about, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I'm at home, and then what do I do? And it pretty soon came up that this individual had not yet made a concerted effort to contact every single one of his clients. And so we were chatting about the different things that he was doing, and he suddenly said to me, wow, I wonder if it would be really helpful for me to reach out to every single one of my clients and make a personal contact. And I'm like, well, what would that do for you? How do you think that would help you? What do you think that would do for your clients? How do you think that would make them feel? What do you think about doing that versus some of the other things you're doing? I just walked him through some questions, and at the end of those questions, it was very clear to him that while he was busy doing stuff in his office, it was really universally successful and important for his clients that he do the reaching out. He immediately shifted gears and said, wow, I need to not be so focused on internal stuff. I need to be focused on external stuff. So the bottom line is, in that case, it is highly versatile and universally useful to have a strong relationship with the client, and for the client to understand that you care about them and you're connecting with them. And that was more versatile and powerful universally than maybe some of the things he was doing on an internal inside his office. Even though in the moment of the crisis, these other internal things felt really important, when he processed it through, it was more versatile, more helpful, more universally successful to strengthen the relationship with the client. So that's what I mean by versatility. What has the most utility across the most situations, and prioritize in that way. Thanks for the tips. Anybody else have questions? I'll be quiet and you can speak them, or you can type them. Any thoughts, any questions?
Barbara, this is Louis. Thank you very much.
Was that helpful?
It was, thank you.
Okay. Georgia,
I have a question about what is 100% true for you? Is that what's 100% true for us, or what's 100% true for the client? Because I have clients who are, you know, they're afraid, and they work in an industry where, you know, they talk to the CDC every single day, and they're just faced with this, and it's really impacting their decision making. And what's 100% true to me, you know, they're thinking they're being irrational, I guess, and it's because of their job that they're irrational. So when I say that what's true for me, the client thinks something else is 100% true.
Okay, I'm sorry. My entire Zoom just stopped.
I'm still here.
Yeah, you're still here. My Zoom just stopped.
Wow.
I just got pushed out of Zoom. So,
I can see you.
yep, you can now, but I lost you there for a moment. Georgia, could you?
Do you want me to get off?
No. No, Georgia, I think you're good. If you can repeat your question for Barbara.
Oh, okay. So it's just about what's 100% true, which was one of your suggestions. I'm trying to get back to it.
Yeah, focus on what's 100% true.
For me or for the client?
Okay, if you're doing this work for yourself, and this is work for yourself, tips.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Then that clarifies it.
Right.
That clarifies it.
Now, this is, I somehow lost my ability to see people. I'm on Zoom, but I can't see you. I don't know what happened. Hold on a sec.
There are still 21 participants, so I think they're all still.
Here we are. I'll have to, okay. Do you see my slides or no?
No, ma'am.
No, we see you.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Hang on. I think this will work this time.
Yep,
Okay.
there it goes.
There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Zoom quit on us. I'm sure I'm not the only person to have that happen. Here we go. Back to normal.
Hey, look at you.
Yeah, I saw my own technology glitch. So this technique of 100% true is really, really, really powerful. It's basically a technique of cognitive restructuring. So there's actually a number of steps to it. The shortcut is focus on what's 100% true, because usually our fears are based in exaggerations.
Right.
Right. And we have to kind of walk back those exaggerations by asking it, is it 100% true that if I walk out of my house and stand on my porch in COVID-19 land, I'm going to die? And the answer is no, that's not 100% true. However, with clients, it can be very helpful for you to use this technique with them as well. If you begin to feel that a client is operating out of an extreme viewpoint, they've got a fear that their retirement is going to completely blow up and they're going to be a on the street homeless person, and you know that's not true. You know, or they've got a fear they can never leave their house again. You know that's not true. If you can let them vent their fears first, and then ask them, you know, where is that coming from? What kind of ideas that you have that are kind of making you that afraid, making you have that level of anxiety? And if they're willing to say, I'm afraid I'll never leave my house again, or I'm afraid I will be out of money, I'll have zero money, then you can gently say to them, okay, that feels really scary. Do you think it's 100% true that you're going to have zero money and be on the street? Given our work together, do you think it's 100% true, 100% true that you're going to have zero work and zero money and you're going to be on the street? And most people, once they've kind of vented their fears and think about that, they're like, no, not 100% true. Okay. And then the second question you ask yourself or them is how is that thought helping you? Is it helping you or hurting you? And even if it feels true, if it's a poisonous thought, every single person will say, that thought is not helping me. It is making me anxious. I am more afraid. So the third step is that you talk, and this could be for yourself or with a client gently. This takes some time. This is not something you do in 30 seconds. That you can talk to the client about, let's think about a way of thinking about this that's really more true and also more helpful. And then you can carry them back to, let's look at what your plan really shows. Let's look at what, how confident are you in this plan? What, how can I help you be more confident in this plan? What's a way you could think about this that would not take you to that place of fear that is, even as we're talking it out, is not 100% true. So how does that hit you, George?
That sounds good. Great. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to flip through back to where we were. I don't have any of the chat space. It just blanked out on me, Buffy. So are there questions that I need to know that people have? Because my chat space is blank. When I connected from Zoom, it erased everything.
I don't have anything I think that you haven't answered that has gone out to everyone. Unfortunately, I can't see anybody. If anybody's sending messages directly to Barbara, she won't be able to see them. So please type them in for everyone if we're missing them.
Okay. So also, if anybody has wanted to ask a question live, feel free.
By all means.
We're going to move on. We have about 15 minutes left. So these are practical tips for you and your clients. Again, you're going to get the PowerPoint you can download, and I've made this into a PDF. So hopefully many of you are familiar with the DISC, D-I-S-C style, or you might be familiar with Myers-Briggs or some of the other basic behavioral style / personality assessments. I use the DISC style because it is more flexible, and I won't go into the psychometrics on that, but it's helpful in a time of challenge for yourself and for your clients to remember the styles, remember your own style, remember your client's style, so that you can adapt your style to be more effective, that you can adapt yourself to be your client. So there's basically 4 styles. We don't have, this could be like an entire day's workshop. I'm going to cover it in 20 seconds. The dominant style is, these are, by the way, my mottos. It's all about speed and results. And the motto for dominance is just do it. Those people just want to get it done, do it, do it, do it. So you're going to notice these people just wanting to know, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are your results? What are you doing? What are you doing? The influence style is all about positivity, fun, and inspiration. They're very outgoing. And so the motto I've used for that is, let's have fun and let's be inspired. These people need vision. They need positivity. They need a lot of cheerleading. So in this environment, they could need a lot of cheerleading and a lot of positivity. The steadiness style is all about collaboration and stability. The steadiness style hates change. Oh my gosh, it's very disoriented for the steadiness style to have all of this disruptive change. It's all about, let's get along, let's work together, let's have everything be stable. So if you remember the styles of your clients and yourself, you're going to be more aware of how they might be reacting. The last one, the C, conscientious style, is all about quality and accuracy. And my motto for that is do it right. So when you have these styles, people can respond from a positive perspective. The dominance is decisive and proactive and results driven and likes challenge. The I influence style is visionary and positive and flexible and likes variety. The steadiness style is loyal and caring and thoughtful and loves to cooperate and collaborate. Conscientious style is objective and methodical and very persistent and likes quality. And those are the style strengths, so you can help activate this. And you're going to get this in the slides and a PDF. Help activate this for yourself and your clients and also team members. But the styles also have negative responses based on fears and anxiety and triggers. So when the styles are triggered, the dominant style can get defensive and angry and rebellious and go rogue because they're just trying to fix it, solve the problem, and they are just off on their own. The I style, because they like to be positive, and right now there's not a lot of positive news, they can get volatile and emotional. They can get kind of scattered, like, what do I do? What do I do? And if they're very persuasive, they could go from being persuasive to manipulating. So the steadiness style, which hates change with a passion naturally, can become very withdrawn. They can be immovable. They can just get stuck and passive. And in order not to create conflict, they can become placated and may not actually give you a straight answer. The conscientiousness style likes quality and accuracy. When things are chaotic, there's no quality and accuracy if we don't know what the heck is going on. So they can become critical and picky and cynical and maybe a little emotionally withdrawn. So you might recognize these reactions in yourself. You might recognize these reactions in team members that you're working with. You might recognize these reactions in clients. Welcome to the human race. This is all very normal under stress. These are common responses in stress. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with the team members. There's nothing wrong with your clients if they're showing any of these reactions. It's just the styles tend to respond differently under stress. And it tells you either you or your team member or your client is having a stress reaction. And if we understand that they're not trying to be whatever they're being, it's just their natural stress reaction, we can have a little more grace for ourselves, grace with our team members, and grace for our clients, because we see it as a stress reaction rather than an intentional behavior or choice. Any questions? Oh, Buffy put up a volatility resource center. Awesome, awesome. Any questions out loud or in the text before I move on? Okay.
Barbara, this is Louis Johnson in Dallas, Texas again.
Yeah, hi.
Earlier you talked about the importance of support and accountability, and I'm just curious if you had any recommendation of resources, either online or books, that kind of are good covering those two ideas.
When I say support and accountability, I mean people.
Okay.
So if you have a colleague that is very supportive, or a friend that is supportive, or family members or community that are supportive, whether it's personal or work, if you can have a peer group that helps you support you and stay accountable, a study group, lots of people have study groups. Very frankly, that's half the reason people hire me is both support and accountability. So when I say support and accountability, I really mean in interaction with other people. There are tools, like you can just have action plans, and you can have a calendar, and you can do checklists and do all that stuff to help you manage yourself. But the reality is it's really hard for our individual selves to be supportive of ourselves, and really hard for individuals to be their best accountability. And I think personally and professionally, one of the most painful things about this whole COVID-19 is we have come to realize that the digital world, as wonderful as it is, and we're so grateful that I can be here, we can all be together, it does not replace three-dimensional human relationships. Does not replace it. And so as much as you can, even if it's on the phone, I have clients I've had for 10 years that I've literally never met in person. So yes, we can have relationships digitally. But when I meant that, I meant find a group, a tribe, a person, a resource that can give you personal support and help you with accountability. Any other questions?
Sounds good, thanks.
Does that help you, Louis?
It does, thank you.
Yes, and often our team members are not our best supports and accountabilities because they have their own concerns and agendas. And often our family members are not our best supports and accountabilities because they have their own concerns and agendas. So often our best supports and accountabilities are someone who's outside the immediate impact of what we're doing. So a peer that doesn't work with you, a study group, a coach, a friend who can help you with that doesn't have an emotional attachment, a subjective attachment, or an agenda that might conflict with yours. I'm looking at the time. Oh, we have about less than 10 minutes. So I wanted to throw up, and I'm sure you've seen, these are just additional communication tips that are helpful for you and your clients. And you're going to see, like, I threw a lot into this, into this PowerPoint because I didn't know what you really wanted to cover today. You are welcome to contact me and have a more personal conversation about what concerns you, because everybody's situation is different. And I mean that very genuinely. But here are some good communication tips that will help you with your team and also with your clients. We talked about reflective listening. I think people have heard this before, but try to remove the word but from your vocabulary, because but removes everything you say in the second half of the sentence. So if someone is late, you say, I'm sorry, I got upset, but you were really late. What people hear is you were really late. So it's good for us to remove the word but, because we have a tendency to use it the wrong way and cause problems for ourselves. A really great technique is called the yes and or 100% technique, especially if people are in disagreement or if a client is upset and you're having a hard time talking with them. You don't want to ever agree with a falsehood, but if you can find one thing you can agree with it and agree with it with conviction, and this is the important part, conviction. You can't be looking like you're faking. You have to do it with conviction. You're creating a bridge to that person, and they can begin to hear you if they understand that you have some level of acknowledging and agreeing with you and you with them. So find one thing you can agree with and agree with it completely. And sometimes it's just a feeling of their upsetness. Like, I can understand that you are really upset about this. They may not be correct in their assumption, but you can at least acknowledge and agree with the fact that they're upset. So people often immediately go to where they disagree, or if they think someone's wrong or they have a point, they go straight to their point. This is all part of acknowledging the person and helping them feel heard and finding a place of agreement. Because when people are upset, they pretty much cannot move on unless they've felt heard. And you'll know this because people will begin to repeat, and you'll be talking to them and they're repeating, and you're talking to them and they're repeating. If someone is repeating, it's because they don't feel heard. And so we want to stop, acknowledge, and help them feel heard. Broken records work. This one's wonderful. If you have a hard time getting through, don't let somebody escalate. Don't let somebody distract you. Just politely repeat your request and just keep going around the record to politely repeat your request. And oftentimes that will work. And then one of my favorite communication techniques is what the psychologists call metacommunication. We talk about the unspoken things. We talk about if you sense someone's upset, but they're not saying they're upset, you can say, well, I notice, you know, you have an expression on your face that makes me wonder if you're feeling what you're feeling right now. You know, very often we spend too much time on the words and the particulars, but we don't address the larger issues that are happening in the relationship, in the conversation. So metacommunication is a way of dealing with the elephant in the room. And then communication traps. This is really true on teams. Whining is really poisonous. We all know that. Venting is normal. The difference between whining and venting is for the purpose of releasing the anxiety, the feeling, and then moving on and coming up with a solution or a way forward. Whining is just circling around and around and around like being in a mud pit. And so unrelenting whining is super toxic for ourselves and for anybody else around us. So if you have team members that are unrelenting in their whining, I would encourage you to figure out a way to address that, because that is really toxic. Forgetting to acknowledge people's feelings is they won't move on unless they've been acknowledged. And you don't have to agree. You just need to acknowledge their feelings. With clients and with team members in a space of anxiety or a lack of information, everybody automatically fills in the worst case scenario. So if any of you have had children who were teenagers who were supposed to come home at 10 or 11 at night and it's 2 in the morning and they haven't shown up at home, you're thinking they're dead on the road somewhere. And you know what? Maybe they went to a friend's house and played video games and fell asleep and forgot to come home and they're asleep at their friend's house. But in a gap of information, when we don't have information, it's a just totally normal human reaction. We fill in the worst case scenario. So you can imagine your team and your clients in a setting where things are kind of anxious, they're filling in the worst case scenario. So more communication is usually better than less. And then the last one is getting stuck on particulars, where we get picky about particulars and we miss sort of focusing on the larger purpose rather than, and so a really great technique is if it feels like it's going tit for tat, back and forth, you're getting stuck, is to step back and say, okay, what is the purpose of this? What is most important? What are we trying to accomplish with this decision, rather than arguing about the particulars? And then lastly, here are 6 disciplines, because many of you are members of leading teams or members of teams. Here are 6 disciplines that really help team. during difficult times. Acknowledge challenges. Don't Pollyanna it because nobody believes that. But acknowledge it with optimism, realistic optimism. Connect the task to a meaning and purpose. That's super helpful for ourselves and other people. Focus on problem solving as a alternative to whining and complaining. Balance that support and accountability. Model and lead a thriving culture, and then absolutely celebrate every single success. In a difficult time, we have to really celebrate successes. And then I've got lots of free tools and tips, and I help people with assessments if you need to get a hold of an assessment. And I have done a lot of talking. So I'm going to stop talking and take any last momentary questions that you are welcome to ask now. You are welcome to email me, because you'll see at the bottom of the screen my direct personal email. That's the best way to get a hold of me, because I'm on the phone with clients all the time. It's hard to reach me by phone. So the best way to get a hold of me is via email. I'm happy to set up a consultation with you. I'm happy to answer your personal questions or get you additional resources. And
Barbara, we can't see your email at the bottom of that slide for some reason. So.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, let's.
I can put it in the chat for you if you'd like.
Can you see it at the bottom of this slide?
No.
What do you? Okay. Huh. I'm sharing my screen.
Is it Barbara at Barbara K Coaching?
Yes. It's Barbara at barbarakcoaching.com. I guess you're not seeing the bottom of the slides. It's also my phone number. Okay, so let me do this. Can you see it now?
Yes.
There we go. I guess the whole slide was not showing up. So let me get to the.
Or BK at Barbara K Coaching. Gotcha.
Yeah, either one. Barbara at Barbara K Coaching. There we go. There we go. Now you can see it. So that's the website, the phone number, and the email. There. Oh, and Buffy put it in the chat space. And now it's 1 minute to the top of the hour, and I have done a rapid fire, massive amounts of techniques and tools. This is what I call throwing spaghetti against the wall for you to pick up whatever piece of spaghetti worked for you. And hopefully it was helpful, and you're welcome to reach out to me if you want to dive deeper with a particular technique or situation that would be helpful for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really great.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, Buffy.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate your time today. We hope this was useful for you. I will be sending out an email to all of you with the presentation and the pieces that Barbara mentioned, including the PDF. And we wish you all to be safe and well. And when you get my email, you'll have my contact information. Please let us know if there's anything we can do for you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.